Straight to it. Tanked or tankless water heaters. Which one saves you the most money? Which one saves you the most hassle? Which one is the best for you? Well, let's break it down and make it really simple up front here. First of all, a tanked system is going to cost you less up front and be a little bit less hassle. However, you have to replace it twice as often as a tankless system. Tankless systems cost more money up front, but in the end are more energy efficient. Now, with all of that being said, there's a whole bunch of caveats and other details that we could talk about here. We're going to dig into that stuff deeper into the video. I just wanted to get all of the real good stuff out of the way at the beginning. So now that I've answered your questions or why you've clicked on this video, let's move forward and dig into things. Section 1, we're going to talk about the basic differences between a tanked and a tankless water heater. So let's get into the tanked system because it's a little bit more conventional. Tanked systems hold a large volume of water, somewhere between 40 to 80 gallons. Tanked systems generally in my area run off of gas and last somewhere between 8 to 12 years. A tankless system heats water as it moves through it, so they don't hold a large body of water. They heat water on demand, and they have a lifespan somewhere around 20 years. Let's cover some common misconceptions too. So for a tankless system, a lot of people think that means true unlimited hot water. It does, but only if the system is sized correctly for the demands that you're going to be applying to it. Another common misconception that plagues the water heater world is that with tanked systems, a lot of people believe that bigger is better. If I'm running out of water with a 40-gallon tank, then buying an 80-gallon tank would make things better. And that's not always the case. Again, we'll dig into this stuff in a minute. Something to touch on briefly before we go much further is the fact that some water heaters run off of electric and some water heaters run off of gas. And I want to kind of cover the differences between those two systems. They're pretty much the same regardless of where you go tanked or tankless. So electric water heaters are easier to install, usually a little bit cheaper up front, but the operational costs are a lot higher because electricity can be a much more expensive way to heat water. And a lot of times people are asking for hot water during peak demand on electrical time, and that's when, for most cities, your electricity is the most expensive. The situations in which an electric water heater might be best is if you live in a location where there are no gas lines that are run to your house, or if you're out in the woods. But again, keep in mind that heating water electrically is extremely efficient. Alright, so I'm going to pop in here for just a second and we're going to have a little bit of a side talk. The first thing I want to say is I said that incorrectly. Trying to heat water with electricity is considered generally inefficient. Now this is excluding energy sources like hydroelectric, wind sources, solar, those sort of things are excluded. I'm talking about the vast majority of the electricity that we are creating here in America is by burning fossil fuels. And then, after burning those fossil fuels, you have to take that energy that's created and transport it to your house. And it is losing energy along the entire process. Or you could take the fossil fuel and transport it directly to your house and then convert it into an energy source in the house, directly inside of the unit that is trying to create heat. This is vastly more energy efficient than trying to do what is considered the current method. Unless, of course, most of your electricity is coming from a renewable source. And then it's kind of arguable. And that's a topic we can get to on another day. Alright, back to the video. So if you're trying to use solar panels to heat your water electrically, there's actually better ways to do that by using the sun to heat the water directly. And they have systems like that are called solar water heating systems. But we're not going to talk about those today. One of the first topics that's probably going to be burning on everybody's mind is the cost of installation. And this is one of the areas where tanked and tankless really differ greatly from each other. And primarily because a tankless system is so much more expensive to install than a traditional tanked system. For the vast majority of American homes, they're running on a traditional tanked system. If you want to upgrade from a natural exhaust system, like you see here on a tank system, to a powered exhaust system that you traditionally see on a tankless system, you have to run a lot more pipes and conduits through your walls than you typically would for a traditional system. Those additional costs where you run your piping and try to get everything out of the house and back into the house because it needs to take air from the exterior of the house generally, Those additional costs are why tankless systems are a little bit more exorbitant than the tanked systems. Now, there are locations in the country, like in Hawaii, where you can literally bolt a tanked water heater on the side of your house on the exterior and avoid a lot of the issues that we're talking about here. However, locations where it actually freezes for the winter, up in the northern portions of the United States, you can't mount a water heater on the exterior, and sometimes, like here in Utah, you can't even put it in the garage without fearing that the water inside of it will freeze. And so a water heater has to be internal to the house, and that just means that a tankless system generally is more expensive to install. Moving forward, I'm going to start talking about prices. Traditionally, home inspectors don't talk about prices, but that's not the direction I'm coming at you from things here. What I've done is I've looked up the national average, and these are supposed to be average installation prices. The prices that you see may vary greatly in your area depending on plumbers and who you have install it and how expensive the system is that you have installed. I've said several times that tank systems are cheaper up front, and that's true. That's because generally a tank system is somewhere between $1,000 to $3,000 to install, and a tankless system, being a higher cost for a more expensive system and more upkeep to install, sits somewhere between $3,000 to $5,000 installed. But the tankless systems last longer than tank systems. The next thing that we need to dig into is the maintenance costs. On a tank system, the maintenance prices are somewhere between $250 to $300 every 2 to 3 years. You gotta have the system flushed, and then about every 5 years you should have the sacrificial anode replaced. That can cost you around $500. Tankless systems have an even higher maintenance cost. They need to be flushed annually, and the annual flush costs somewhere between $300 to $500. And the reason for this is because with a tankless system, little pipes or conduits inside of it, and the mineralization that occurs as water is heated is just kind of a byproduct of the way things work. And that mineralization starts to build up inside of the pipes and blocks the pipes off and prevents the flow, eventually causing the system to throw an error code because there's not enough water flowing through it to keep it from overheating itself, and it won't run anymore. This is a pretty common problem that occurs, and not enough people are talking about it. The way you prevent this is by flushing the lines to get that mineralization out with a special chemical. Most plumbers have access to the chemical and the specialized tools that you generally need to flush a system like that. And so this is something that's got to be done annually on these tankless systems. But remember, they'll last 20 years as long as you do this. A traditional tank system is subject to something known as standby heat loss. Standby heat loss basically means that as the system stands there with a large body of heated water inside of it, it'll gradually lose its heat. It doesn't matter how efficiently you insulate it, how much money you spend on protecting the inside of that water, it's going to lose its heat as it stands there, not being used. And eventually, it needs to be warmed back up so that it maintains a usable temperature. And the heat kicks on and fires up and burns gas or electricity to start heating that water back up. If this happens multiple times without anybody using the water, every single time that occurs is just a waste. And with a tanked system, it's going to take, depending on the size, somewhere between 30 minutes to an hour to heat that entire column of water there. Because it's going to heat the water, but it's not going to do it very rapidly. It takes its time about it. A tankless system, on the other hand, has no standby heat loss, and that's because when you want hot water, it starts creating hot water as soon as you turn the thing on and start demanding. Now, this means that it has to heat that water as it travels through the system. Now, the pipe either circles around a big heating column, or maybe there's like a honeycomb radiator system. There's a bunch of different ways to do this, but either way, the idea is to try and introduce as much heat to the water as quickly as possible. Now, if the water isn't actually flowing through this system quick enough, they actually produce enough heat to burn themselves down, which is one of the reasons why if they plug up, they'll produce that error message. Beyond that, though, they burn a lot more gas per gallon of water heated than a traditional tanked system does. And that's because they gotta produce a lot of heat to be able to heat that water. Even the high efficiency ones are still struggling to just match what it costs to heat each gallon of water to what a traditional tank system does. But again, a tank system is probably going to have to reheat the water multiple times a day, and a tankless system is only going to have to heat the water the one time you're going to use it. And this really rolls us into the segment that we want to kind of dig in a little bit more to the energy efficiencies and savings here, right? So as we've said before, a tank system is going to burn more gas throughout the day, just maintaining the heated water. But again, if you're living inside of a house where heated water is being drained out of that tank system, maybe the kids get up in the morning and take a shower, and then the parents take a shower in the evening, and all that system has to do is keep the water warm in the middle of the day, your efficiency gains might not actually be that much by changing over to a tankless system, simply because you're paying for that much more gas to heat the water up every single time you use it. And if you're using the water with some high level of frequency, tankless systems start to lose some of their efficiency in comparison. One other thing to keep in mind is that if you live in a really, really cold climate, I'm looking at people that live up in Canada or the northern half of the United States, sometimes a tankless system just doesn't make sense because with the colder weather means you have to consume even more gas to heat that water, and you really start getting away from some of your energy efficiency gains. This is one of the primary reasons why these systems aren't as popular as further north. However, with the efficiency gains that they're getting in some of the newer modern systems, you're starting to see them move that way. How do you best take care of these systems? Well, with a tanked system, it's pretty simple. You need to call a plumber out at least once every 2 to 3 years and have them flush the system. You need to get rid of the mineralization that's going to build up in the bottom of your tank. With a tankless system, you call somebody out once a year and you have them flush the system. Again, this is to prevent mineralization. Now, mineralization can be greatly reduced by adding water softener systems in a house, but areas like Utah or Colorado, and I think Washington has some places like this, the mineralization content in those mountainous regions are so high that even a water softener still isn't going to get rid of enough of the mineralization to prevent you from needing to flush your system once a year. I know that this is the case in my area. And one last time, I've said it before, but tank systems are designed to last 8 to 12 years. You can even get into the 15, 16, 20 year range, but that's if you maintain them the right way and actually replace the sacrificial anode every 3 years or so. Tankless systems need that yearly maintenance, just like I said here in hard water areas. It's very, very important to make sure that you do that. And most tankless systems require specialized tools to maintain them. Having a tank system in your house is still kind of a DIY repair. If you have the knowledge for it, you can clean those tanks out yourself. But I wouldn't recommend doing that with a tankless system. Did you know that the tankless water heater was actually invented before the tanked water heater? Actually invented by a London painter named Benjamin Watty, and he called it the geyser. And it's pretty similar to the way tankless water heaters look these days. This one was actually invented in 1868, which means the tankless water heater predates the first tanked water heater as we know it today. The first tanked water heater was actually produced by Edwin Roode in 1889, 21 years after Benjamin Watty figured out how to make tankless water heaters. The big difference was that Edwin Roode designed his tanked water heater to be usable for everybody in North America. He had a goal here. He wanted hot water in every single house. And prior to 1889, being able to have hot water at the single turn of a knob was actually science fiction. It wasn't something that really happened back then. Some other considerations while we're talking about water heaters that I like to share with people on my inspections. One of the first things is that a tankless water heater is actually going to increase the resale value of your home. It's not necessarily a make or break item. It is definitely something that is currently expected in the luxury level homes, particularly in my area and most of the markets that I've heard of. If you're going to decide that you want to stay with a tanked system, but one of your biggest complaints is that there's just not enough hot water and you're running out, instead of upgrading from a 40-gallon tank or a 50-gallon tank to an 80-gallon tank, I would recommend downgrading to 2 smaller tanks. This is actually more energy efficient and makes it easier for you to heat your water up in a shorter period of time. Instead of taking the hour and a half to 2 hours it takes to heat an 80-gallon tank, it's only going to take you about 30 minutes to heat 2 40-gallon tanks. Some other drawbacks to tankless systems that most people don't think about is the noise level. A tankless system actually creates a lot more noise during operation than a traditional tanked system does. But again, they live longer and are supposed to be more energy efficiency, so you win some, you lose some. Then, if the power goes out, a tankless system isn't going to be able to supply fire for you anymore. But if the gas is gone and the electricity is gone, You still have 40 gallons of hot water until the gas and electricity get back. A tankless system isn't going to do that for you. Right now, because tankless systems are billed as more energy efficient, some areas give you a tax rebate. You just kind of have to check what your government programs look like. Tankless systems cost more now, but over the life of the systems, because you're not dealing with that heat loss, they consume less energy and can save you money there. But you're not going to see those returns until it's been about 20 years worth of owning the system. And then the returns are pretty marginal when you're considering the fact that the difference in cost between the two of them is about $1,000 over 5 years. Get a little bit more personal with things. If you have a large family and you're not leaving on vacation regularly and you're going through a ton of hot water, to be 100% honest, I think that a tanked system is a better alternative. However, if you have a small family, if it's a small house, or it is something that you guys are in and out of pretty regularly and it gets left vacant for long periods of time, you really can't beat the efficiency gains that you get with a tankless system. If you've got more questions about tanked versus tankless systems, let me know down below what they are and I'll try to answer the best ones. Other than that, I'll see you guys on the next video.